Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of the Friends in Faith Collective. I'm Sam.
And I'm Marina.
And today I wanted to do something a little bit different than our normal, where we pick a topic and talk about something. Today I wanted to actually start with a question for you that I hope we can dive a little bit further into on this episode. I know that there's a lot of gold in this topic, as you and I have talked about it a lot on and off throughout the duration of our friendship. And I know that in asking you these questions, in seeking guidance for myself, being a new believer, that you've been so helpful in providing that guidance for me. But I've never asked you this question for the sake of what it was like for your experience. So my question to you is, as a new believer, or when you were a new believer, how did you start talking with God and hearing God?
Well, I think this term as a new believer, I was raised in church. I started going to church when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And so as a new believer back then, it was just basic prayers at Sunday school type of thing. I don't think that my true, close, deep relationship with the Lord started until I was in my, I want to say, mid-30s, maybe a little bit before, in my 30s.
Do you think that's common for people who are raised in a church, that they come back with a closer relationship with God later?
I believe so, because I mean, when you're a child, you're pretty much just being raised in that environment. You're doing it because your parents are making you, type of thing.
Right.
So you don't really know any different until you become older and start dealing with true life circumstances. Then I think that's where the true faith comes in, of, are we really putting our trust and our faith in the Lord that we grew up knowing and hearing about? And so as you become an adult and you come across all these life circumstances, for me, it was probably in one of my hardest journeys of life. I've had two. One really deep one for me, though, was when I had experienced a pretty bad depression. I knew in that moment, the one thing that I was grateful for is that I knew God would help me out of it. I just didn't know when and how long. And so in that life circumstance of me going through that very hard, dark time in my life, God was all I had to depend on. And he was all I had to really talk to, and the hope that I had that could get me out of the pit that I was in. So I was talking to him daily in my prayer closet, doing a prayer journal. And so I want to say the prayer just got deepened as I was spending that time with him in my closet daily, multiple times a day. And hearing his voice happened during that time also. And it's not an audible voice that we hear like you're hearing right now, me speak, or our listeners. It's more of a soft thoughts that he puts. Mm-hmm. God does more of a whisper, and you know it's him when it aligns with his word. And again, the more time you spend with him. But the prayer and the talking to God, I grew up in church learning how to do simple prayers. It wasn't until I got older where it was consistent. And not only was I doing prayers or whisper prayers, but then I developed the courage to actually pray out loud. I do that with my students in class now, and if a friend needs prayer, sometimes I pray out loud in the car. So it just evolves the more that we do it, and the repetition, I guess. Yeah. So
you and I have talked about it before, that I struggle to pray out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I had a moment in my car yesterday. I was left an appointment, and I had like overwhelming gratitude, and I'm driving and I'm getting on the freeway, and I just started talking out loud to God about my gratitude. And halfway through it, I said, okay, wow. And thank you for also answering my prayer that I can actually pray out loud now. Like, it just happened organically. It was a cool moment. but
No,
I wanted to
that's
tell you
so
that
cool.
happened.
Yes.
I meant to text you about it last night and I forgot. Hopefully I can
That's
do it now with
so
other people.
cool. You will. You'll build up that. In prayer is honestly, there's so much pressure behind it because you're like, oh, I want to sound good. I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What if I
Yeah.
sound dumb? Like, what are they going to judge me?
Yeah.
There's so much that goes behind it.
I don't want to
Like
sound like a newbie.
I've told my students in class, when you're praying, you're having a conversation with God like you would have a conversation with me or, your parents or your friends. There's been times where I felt like God was rolling his eyes at me when I was like in my prayer closet and I had my music playing and I was taking my deep breaths and like preparing myself and like, okay, I'm going to have this holy moment with Jesus. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, Lord, I just want to thank you for today. And I want to thank you for all these things. And it wasn't in a like making fun, but I was just trying to have everything perfect, that I felt like it, like literally in the middle of my praying of like, thank you for this and appreciate that. And you're so good, God. And those things are valid, but I was trying to have like the perfect circumstances where in the middle of my prayer, I literally felt like God was rolling his eyes looking at me. And I just stopped and I'm like, okay, God, that's not how I talk. This is not, me. So I'm going to say, God, this is what I'm dealing with. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you in this. I need some help in this area. And it's been a little stressful. I could really use a little peace right now in my life. You feel me?
Yeah.
That's how you, and I told my students that when I'm teaching them the Bible and I'm talking to them about that.
Yeah.
I said, you could even be like, yo, God, I need your help right now. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. Like, as long as you're not disrespecting God, God knows. He just wants to talk to you.
He knows your heart.
He knows your heart and he just wants to talk to you. And like I would call you up on the phone and say, hey, I'm struggling right now. I could really use some prayer, dealing with this in my life. You literally can do the exact same thing with Jesus. And it can be in your car. It can be in the shower. It can be on the toilet. It can be in a prayer closet, in a classroom, in church, literally wherever you are.
Yep.
It does not have to be this perfect spot. Now, granted, as you grow in your relationship with God, there are times where I've had people say, well, how do you know God's speaking to me? Or how do I know that I've never heard him talk to me, or I've never heard. Well, many times that is also because, number one, you have to be spending a lot of time with him, because if I were to go to Target and I were to hear your voice but not see you in the middle of the aisles, I would immediately go, that's Sam. Sam's here. Where is she? And I'd go looking for you.
Right.
That's the same thing. The more time you're spending with Jesus, the more you're going to be able to recognize his voice. So it's spending that time with him daily, but also finding those moments to be quiet with him, because God will not compete with noise. And when he speaks, it's more of a whisper and something that's placed into your head or your heart. And you'll know it's God if it aligns with his word, and it's something maybe that you've been praying on and you're asking for confirmation. But as you continue to grow in your relationship with Jesus, it's more about spending more time with him, reading your word so you know the things that he has to share with us, and being able to hear his voice and to be able to decipher if that's him or not, is spending the time with him and having those moments of quiet time.
Yep.
And you may be okay with quiet times because of your hermit crab Sam personality of just wanting to be alone, and is very hard for someone like me who needs noise to function.
Yeah.
I was that type of person when I worked in a corporate job. I was doing my work at my office and I had to have music playing in the background. If it was too quiet, if I got there before everybody and it was too quiet, I couldn't focus. It was driving me crazy. I had to learn how to be okay in silence. And I think it's a coping mechanism when we tend to be more busy. We just want to do things. A lot of times that's also because we don't want to deal with situations, or we don't know how to sit and be quiet, because our brain will then default to negative thinkings or past circumstances or whatever.
Yeah.
Being busy is a coping mechanism, and God wants you. I mean, hello, he created the world in 6 days and clearly says you need to rest on the seventh. He wants you to have a day of rest. He wants you to have that time. And if you're busy all the time and you don't have the time to sit with him and pray, you're not going to be able to hear his voice and know the difference. But I'm proud of you for doing that. You will get more comfortable with praying out loud, even more so in front of people. And that's just another part of I've seen so much growth in you. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Like the things that you've shared and your connections with God and talking with him and him answering some prayers, him showing himself to you. Like, I'm such a proud mama.
Thank you. I know it's exciting. We talked about when we were first kind of starting this up, and we had talked about it being a faith-based podcast. And I was kind of like, well, gosh, I don't think I have anything to contribute because, okay, I watched a video last night on Instagram, and it was a very funny, like family-friendly competition. And it was, 2 lines of people, and they were paired up. So it was like 2 people would come to the front and someone asked a question, and it was, did you see this video?
I think I know what you're talking about.
And she was saying, like, say a chapter of the Bible that starts with the letter G. So like she would just say G, and then they had to guess, and the guy was like Genesis, and then she was like, okay, one with, whatever the next letter was, L, and the guy said Luke, and then the next one was E, and Ephesians, right? Like it went through that. And the first 2 I got, and I was starting to be like, look at me. I know what I'm talking about. And it was like 2 out of 10. And then the next 8 she's going. And I was like, wait a second. I thought she started with the easy ones. But my point is I was feeling very less than or lackluster in what I could bring to this podcast because I have no clue what I'm doing like on a regular day-to-day basis, but like I really have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to talking about faith or talking about the Bible or talking about God. And you had told me something, and I'll never forget it. You had said that sometimes, I can't remember your exact words, but it was something along the lines of sometimes that fire, that like on fire feeling of being brand new with God is the most powerful experience. And that could hit home for somebody and be what brings them to God. And if I'm comparing it to something else, like in marriage, right? Like the honeymoon phase fades away, and then you kind of like go through ruts, right? Where things are hard and great and amazing, and then hard. And that's kind of, I think, the same of what you can expect on your walk, is that there's going to be a lot of low points too. And I've seen people talking about it and saying there's times where I felt like I stopped talking to God or I stopped hearing God. And it's in those moments where you're on fire for him. And so I'm very much in a season and being like so on fire for God. I told my husband even, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I said, I'm at a point in my life where like I don't want to talk about anything else. Like if we're not talking about God, like go away. I don't even want to talk. I don't even want to talk to you because I'm busy. I got to talk about God. I either want to be alone with God or I want to talk about God. So I'm proud of me too, because I'm very happy with where I'm at in that area of my life. And you were saying earlier that you can talk to God anywhere. And it made me internally giggle because the first time I ever witnessed the Holy Spirit, I was sitting on the toilet. I'm not sure if I've shared that on the podcast yet before.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. You can, but
yeah, so if that's your story, that's your story. And I'm going to stand on the top of the roof and yell it because it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm trying to remember because there's something else you said and I made a connection to that as well. And I wanted to bring it up. Goodness, what was it? I remember. Yes. That was a question I asked you. How can I hear God? Like that, I think, is a very legit question for a new Christian or a new believer is, what do I have to do to hear God? And I think I just texted you that one day. Like, how do I know? I think I asked you, how do I know if this is from God? And it was like an opportunity that had come up. And I was like, well, how do I know? And that was exactly what you told me. And that gave me a lot of clarity, because I was like, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. And now as I am spending more time with him, more time talking to him, I can hear him. And it is something I never want to lose sight of, because it's a relationship that you have with God. It's not a religion, it's a relationship, and it is your own. And it is so special. Like, I could cry. It's so special. And I hope thinking about it, makes me sad. Like, there's going to be times where I hit low points with him, and that makes me sad, because I'm so on fire. I hope that never goes away. But I know it's going to at some point.
There's going to be times where we talk about being in the valley, those low points, and then being up on the mountaintop, which is where you're at right now in the high points. The valleys are very, very hard. But it also says to count it all as joy, because you know that he's with you. And it's hard to comprehend that, like, to count all your troubles as joy, to count it all as joy, your hard times and all that. But have you not gone through, and I'm not just saying you, but I'm speaking to our viewers, have you not gone through something that you have not become stronger coming out of?
Right.
And that's the Lord walking through it with you. And it is hard to go through those times, and that's the clarity of your heart that I see right now in the relationship you have with him, is you don't want to disappoint him, or you don't want to look at him that way. There was a time in my life where, gosh, I started going to church when I was 10, 11 years old. And out of all my years of having a relationship with God and going to church, there was one particular time in my life where I went through a really hard season. So I just come out of having a miscarriage, and I was very angry with God, because we had been trying for a while and couldn't get pregnant. And then we did, and we lost the baby. And I was very angry with God, because how could you let me go through this? How could I experience it? Why would you do this? If you loved me and you loved that child, why would you allow this to happen? I was first time in my life that I'd ever been that angry. So much so that I stopped going to church. And when people were telling me, I'm praying for you, I would tell them, don't pray for yourself. And I look back at it now, and I'm like, Lord, I'm so sorry that I went through that phase of my life of just being that angry where I didn't even want to know you. But he allows things to happen for reasons. And a lot of times we don't understand it. We understand in reverse after he's walked us through it, and he's brought us out stronger, walked us through those flames. We understand, and we look back, this is why I went through these things. And so there will be those times, like any relationship, good and bad in any relationship. Just know that the Lord will never leave. He will never turn his back on you. And the times that we do feel that he's distant, or we don't hear his voice, it is not that he's ever left. It's because we've become distant. And it's typically in those times where I've questioned, God, where are you? Or how come I don't hear you? Or I don't feel connected to you. And it's like, well, have you been reading your Bible? Have you been sitting in your prayer closet? I'll say my prayers in the morning or somewhere throughout the day and that kind of thing. But it's different, just like any relationship with us. If we text here and there, how are you doing? Hey, how's it going? Oh, cool.
Right.
Hope all is well. You're not going to have a great quality of a relationship with any friend or any person if you're just, hey, this, hey, that. But if you're spending time with the person, the relationship is going to get better.
Yep.
You're going to have that closeness feeling. And so it's the same thing with the Lord. He's never going to leave. And at the times in our lives when we have moments of feeling distant or that we can't hear him, it's because we have drifted away. And many times it's something as innocent as just being busy and going about day-to-day things, not making him a priority. I know that God allowed me to go through that journey and time in my life so that I can help connect with other women who have gone through that as well. Because it's a very hard season of life of physically and emotionally healing and things you got to go through. And I'll be the first to admit there's times where I'm doing amazing. I've got my schedule of like prayer time, reading my Bible, doing all those things. And then life happens, something comes up, and I just lose that routine.
Yeah. But sometimes even if you're in the routine, sometimes it just becomes routine.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite worship songs is called Monday Morning Faith, I believe is what it's called. And I'll send it to you if you haven't heard it. But she is saying, I don't want just the Sunday faith. I want the Monday morning, basically saying there's that stigma around Monday mornings are mundane and who likes a Monday? Everybody hates Mondays. Like, I want to have the faith on a Monday morning, and I want to wake up and be on fire for God on a Monday morning when the rest of the world is and mundane. You know, it's kind of talking about that. And then it says like, I want a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? Like every day of the week. It's a great song. I love the lyrics. It is one that I will put on repeat when I'm struggling or having an off day and like I really need to feel connected to God. I'll put that on and I'll go for a drive. I did it a couple weeks ago. I put it on. I went for a drive. I went to the beach and I just blasted it, put all the windows down, and I was just screaming it in my car. I'm sure people were driving by going,
that was girl's you? That was you? I saw that. I was like, this girl's crazy.
You're
just
so
kidding.
Full of baloney. There's probably people on the freeway going, this girl's having a mental breakdown. Don't worry, I was. Okay?
Hello, 911.
I was not alone, though. I was with God. Something I wrote down when you were just talking about like more of the lower areas or when things are hard, kind of circling back to what I was saying, how I'm sad to think about the times that are going to be low because I know how amazing and incredible it feels. Like there's not words for it when you're so on fire for Him. So I made the connection when you were talking about, you know, if I look back on painful things that I've been through in my life, they were that painful and I was alone. And I have to try to remember when I'm in the pits, right, of like the lower points, or maybe if I try to remind myself that I'm not alone, you know, maybe that will, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to comfort myself and say, don't be sad about the low times that are coming because look how horrible it was when you did it alone. It's not going to be like that now. You know what I mean? Like the hard times are not going to be like that because you're going to have God and you're going to remember that He's there. And I don't know, I'm just trying to comfort myself and say, it's okay, Sam, don't worry that the low times are coming because you have God.
Well, let me share with you. You've always had God. God has always been there. You just weren't aware of it. He's carried you through those times, and He will carry you through anything else that will happen in your life. The beauty now versus back then is that you're aware that He's near.
Yeah.
And you have that comfort to lean on. You have that Father to fall into His arms. And when the times get hard, you know who is in control and who will handle the situation because He's pulled you out of it before He's going to do it again.
Right.
And I think that's where the comfort and the peace in now knowing Jesus and having the relationship with Him, He's always been there. He's created you from day one. He's always been there. And He's carried you through every single circumstance. Even when we don't understand some of the ugly things that have happened in our lives and why, there's times where He will reveal that to us. And there's times where maybe He doesn't want us to know. And we have to be okay with that too. But just know that He's always been with you. You weren't alone going through those things. You just weren't aware of it as you are now.
Yeah.
And the peace that you will have now in anything going forward is more for you, not Him, because He was always there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're worried or sad about how those times may come, because yes, the Bible talks about it. We have worship songs that talk about being high on the mountain and down in the valleys. He's with you always. We just feel his presence more in the valleys because we have him. Like, sometimes he's the only hope we have to cling to.
Yeah.
But how good is that now, knowing going forward? Like, right, you may not have been a valley, or maybe you would consider it a valley of some things that you recently were going through over the last several months, of things that you've shared with me. How beautiful is that to know that God has carried you through, and look at some of answered prayers and testimonies that he's already shown himself to you.
Yeah, that's true.
He's always been with you.
Yep.
That's why you're still standing.
Yeah. And I found him in a time where I really needed him. And there was times where I was distant with him, and he carried me anyways. And like now when I kind of look back, like after you saying that and realizing that, I am doing a little bit of like a flipping through, like low moments in my life. And I'm like, okay, he was the only hope I was holding on to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Marina, I see you.
It's those times where he's like, I've been here the whole time. I've just been waiting for you to surrender so that I can take it from you and deal with it.
Yeah.
I can help you walk through it. You mentioned something about like you've pushed away or you've rejected or that kind of thing. I don't remember what you said, but it led me to want to share, like, that's the beauty of a father's love. If you look at it from a parent perspective, do we always love our parents or agree with what they do? Times when they're even tough love or trying to discipline us or show us things and we don't want to hear it or we don't want to see it their way, we think we know it all, or we push them away and we're like, nope, I don't want to hear it. And yet it's the father embracing, like, I'm still here and you're going to get it no matter what, because I know what's better for you than you know.
Right.
So
yeah,
ultimately, we are here to talk about relatable topics, to offer hope to women who feel like they're alone in their situations and struggles, and to help you connect into a deeper, more connected relationship with the Lord. We thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. As always, if any of this was helpful or you connected with it, we appreciate the likes. Share this with your friends. And until we see you next time, we appreciate you. See you later.
see ya.
Bye.